This is DesignSafe Radio, where natural hazards researchers strive to make our society more resilient to everything nature throws at us.
So you mentioned a lot about this perishable data. So after a landslide, after an earthquake, after a hurricane, you get, I'm imagining, terabytes of like laser scanning data or multispectral camera data or Google Street View images. What happens next? How do we get this to actually a practical form? And what does that form kind of look like? What is this data used for?
So there's a lot of different paths towards that we follow after returning from a deployment, and it's really driven very much by the users of what their priorities are, what they see as the kind of urgencies on post-processing, what kind of experience they have. And so let me just offer you kind of a range of options. We will sometimes return with users who have no experience whatsoever with post-processing. They are not really so interested in the post-processing itself. They're interested in centimeter scale resolution measurements of a building deformation, because we're again here to support their scientific work, their larger scientific objectives. In cases like that, a lot of times we'll do the post-processing ourselves for them and quickly deliver it to them to, very rapidly enable their science. On the other hand, we work with some users who have experience with post-processing data. And so they may take that and work with their students or make with their home research teams and post-processing that. Sometimes we have users who come to the RAPID facility and will spend 1 or 2 or 3 days here in residence working with our staff and learning very quickly how to post-process the data. And then with that understanding, they'll return to their home institutions and they'll carry forth from there. So again, there's a whole range of ways that we move forward in the actual processing. And then the manner in which the data is post-processed is really very specific to the instruments. And so, of course, we have proprietary software that's used for laser scanner manufacturer A that's different than that which we would use for laser scanner manufacturer B. And again, that's some of the value that we have. We already have licenses for those different proprietary programs, but we also know how to use those programs and help users get move their data processing along.
Yeah,
and
that's
then there's
not
the
a
other
trivial
kind of
thing either. Like, from the RAPID workshop a few years ago, it's like, oh my goodness, just the learning curve for things like that software for the Leica laser scanner is like, wow, this is going to take a long time to master to where I would be able to do anything usable with it other than just say, hey, I made a little, point cloud here, and getting to know how to actually use that for a scientifically useful purpose. It takes a whole lot of training, which you guys provide to some level as well. But if you're, like you said, the kind of person who's like, just give me my data. I've got problems to solve, and I got enough other things to worry about, and don't have 1,000 hours or 100 hours to gain mastery in each of these software platforms. So it's really good that you're able to kind of meet people where they're at and where their interests really are.
Yeah, and there's also questions about like what resolution you need, because if you need the very, very tight resolution, which can be provided with the data sets collected, it may take longer to get the data into that form. And sometimes we work with teams who say, I don't need centimeter scale resolutions. I need measurements that are on the order of 5 centimeters across a very broad field. That will help us suggest to them another processing routine that can happen a lot faster, and we won't get bogged down in a sense into those details. But then very much what we try to do with the facility is take that friction out of the system, right? Of collecting the field data. The friction is when you get back and getting bogged down with all this post-processing. We want to take that away to kind of more smoothly enable individuals to collect the field data and put it to work for scientific purposes very quickly.
Do you work with them on kind of the research questions that they want to answer up front so that informs all of the rest? How do you work with them on that side of the house?
We always ask at the outset, what are your scientific objectives? What are you trying to achieve? We don't want to drive the science. We have brilliant teams that we work with that are very focused, that are domain experts, and we would never want to supersede that. We don't want to drive the science in a sense ourselves. We don't want to have a monopoly on that. Instead, we want, in this marketplace of intellectual concepts and ideas and inquiries, we want the community to drive those. We want to understand what those objectives are and then work with those teams to help them achieve those objectives. So we're really very careful in not prescribing what kind of data should be collected, but rather saying, what are you trying to achieve here? And then we can talk about what might be useful to collect, or what kind of instruments would be best suited for their objectives, or what kind of instruments could be best imported into, for example, Indonesia, with like our knowledge of working with expediters and so forth. So we put all of that together, but really to recommend a plan, but not to recommend how to actually do the work. We'll make those suggestions, and teams sometimes say, although I understand you're suggesting that, I actually still want this instrument. And they're in control of the project. We're here to support them, but we'll provide them with as much advice as possible. And I'll tell you that in 95% of the cases, the teams concur, like, okay, this is a great strategy. Let's use these instruments and move forward in that direction.
Yeah, and it's really important that, I mean, we have great community-fed things like the NHERI Science Plan and the Rapid Science Plan as part of that as well, that can help give some granularity and give some direction towards research questions. If a researcher is like, I don't know what I want to do. I know I want to use the rapid stuff because it's really exciting, but I don't know what to use it for. We've got those elements for inspiration and a bit of guidance, but not prescription, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Another thing here that we are talking about, and this is one of my other passion areas, as you know, is that planning aspect of going through, here's some possible courses of action you can take, and here's some things you may want to take into consideration. How does that planning process go towards those scientific objectives? Do you always link it back to the science plan, or is it a set process every time that you go through? Can you tell us a little bit more about how that goes?
Yeah, every single one is really a bit different. We have, in a sense, a template for how we respond. But again, it's very much contoured to the mission. And I think that is every setting is different. The weather conditions are different. The customs regulations are different. And so all of those things kind of go into our planning. But the way this would kind of unfold with, for example, the NHERI Science Plan would really kind of set the grand challenges for the community. The community would say, here's an opportunity to make some progress towards these grand challenges by collecting this data, analyzing it in this fashion. They would communicate that to us. We'd very quickly, put together a data collection plan, an instrumentation plan, again, kind of best suited to sort of the whole range of variables we were kind of thinking about. We have an online form that's very easy to use on our website. We ask for some real basic information. We call you within 24 hours. And so I think the important thing is we call, and we do that so that we can have a discussion. We don't have a lengthy email exchange, because we really want to have a dialogue and develop a plan together very quickly. And the fastest way of doing that is to get on a telephone call or a video conference call. And so we'll make those recommendations, and then we'll kind of set the plan and the process of how we're going to get these instruments to you. Are you going to come pick them up? Or are we going to ship them to a holding facility? Turns out to be quite a challenge, particularly working, for example, in a hurricane affected area where the FedEx holding centers may be large volume buildings that are now closed. And so we'll kind of work with teams and sometimes getting it into an adjacent city and then getting it driven in. But we do have a template of all of the things that are important, but we don't follow it so systematically because, again, it really is taken very much on a case-by-case basis.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of DesignSafe Radio. This show is sponsored by the National Science Foundation, grant number 2129782. You can subscribe to DesignSafe Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find your podcasts. Please leave us a review so that we can improve the show and also help others find our episodes in iTunes.
Thanks for your feedback and support. We really appreciate it. You can find out more about NHERI at DesignSafe-ci.org, on Facebook at DesignSafe Radio, or on Twitter at NHERI DesignSafe.